Reaction to Jim Edmonds' comments yesterday, plus the biggest ifs for the Cardinals in 2025. This is Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Cardinals fans. I'm JD Hafford, and I am your host for Locked On Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. You can follow me on Twitter, X at JD Sports Radio. You can also follow the podcast at LO_Cardinals. Do want to thank those of you who make Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We're also available on YouTube. If you haven't seen us there yet, come on by, like, subscribe, comment, and hit that notification button so you don't miss any episodes. This is a show serving Cardinal Nation and giving the best fans of baseball all of the info about the birds on the bat. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there is no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Just download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. So Thomas Govain from RedbirdRants.com was set to join us today to talk some ball and family emergency. His son got sick today at school, so he had to leave, and he wasn't able to make today's episode. Any parents out there know kids are always getting sick. So when it happens, you got to run and you got to do your thing. So unfortunately, he can't make it here today. And honestly, it's not that surprising that his kid or anybody is sick these days. You know, we've had these freezing cold temperatures for weeks on end because, you know, it's wintertime. And then yesterday we had spring training like weather in St. Louis where, you know, it was really, really nice out. Kind of got me thinking about going out to the grill and grilling some stuff out, and had me thinking about life in Jupiter and spring training with the Cardinals. And I'm starting to get really, really excited about the guys reporting soon. Like, we're not that far off, but the up and down temperatures, you know how it is, man. People get sick. It's rough on some folks. But anyways, Thomas should be back next week, and we hope for a speedy recovery to his kid and to any of you who are dealing with illnesses right now. But before we get into some new stuff, some things we were going to discuss with Thomas today, I want to quickly just kind of go back and read a few comments regarding yesterday's episode where we were talking about Cardinals Hall of Famer and former broadcaster Jim Edmonds and the comments that he made on the morning after on 101 ESPN. That's the morning show on there. It was a big story yesterday, and he talked about the issues with the broadcasting side of things, the technical side, and, you know, his part of the job, saying it's just not the same anymore, and it kind of took the toll on the fun part of it. And, you know, he just didn't enjoy it the way he thought he was going to, and that he wasn't going to be coming back next year. It was apparent that they weren't going to ask him back for next year. So everybody's fine. They're like, you know, it's cool. I didn't really want to come back anyway, so we're all good there. But then he went on talking about the Cardinals and talking about them as a whole, about how things are just weird and they're not fun around the organization like it used to be, and how the alumni feel about it, and how it makes them feel like they aren't wanted around the stadium anymore. And you can hear yesterday's episode in its entirety if you'd like. But here's what some fans had to say about Jimmy not only not coming back for the broadcasting side of things, but also his thoughts on the Cardinals. We'll start with Scott G here. Scott says, sometimes the truth hurts, and he was one of the few in the organization willing to call out the problems in the front office and on the field. Lisa says, it's always nice to hear an analyst who really knows the game because they've played it, especially on a high level. Unlike some who call a game like it is textbook, I learned a lot when listening to Edmonds, and that was very enjoyable. He kept things real. Terry says, the mood has changed when Mo fired Schilt. Mo and company are the rot in this organization. R2D4 says, he made valid points on the organization, and the organization sucks now. And he pointed it out. They need to sell the team. The DeWitts have lost the real focus. LMS says, never understood the hate on Edmonds broadcasting. I liked his insight, and he was much more critical when it called for it. I'd rather take that over the vanilla, always positive Brad Thompson. Thompson broadcasts like he can't say one negative thing about the team, and everything is perfect. Tennessee Plowboy, which I thought was a funny name, because that is where Jim Edmonds is living now, is in Tennessee. And he talked about that in the interview yesterday about how he enjoys being on the farm with his kids and his wife and doing that instead of doing baseball stuff all the time. But Tennessee Plowboy says, wow, so genius. Jimmy finally breaks the top secret news that there are problems in the Cardinals organization. What a breaking news flash. Not. He sounds like a disgruntled fired employee. It was so boring listening to Edmonds drone on about his playing days. I usually listened to the KMOX audio or the opposing team's broadcast whenever Edmonds was working. So glad he is gone. Rich says, glad Edmonds won't have a microphone in front of him. Funny how even his excuse was directed back towards himself. The guy is an egomaniac. He's narcissistic. He interrupts all the time. And honestly, he's got the personality of one of his bats. Just because he played doesn't mean he needs to be a commentator. That's just some of the feedback that we got from yesterday's show. And it's not surprising. Jimmy's kind of a polarizing guy. Some people, as you can tell, do not care for Jim Edmonds' personality. It's not one that really rubbed me the wrong way ever. He's a guy that clearly thinks highly of himself and is very confident with himself. But I never worried about it. I just paid more attention to what he was saying about what was going on in the game. All the other stuff I could care less about. But, there's people that don't like him and just simply do not like him. There are others who enjoyed his broadcast. I was one of the guys who enjoyed him. I don't know him personally, so I don't know what he's like off the field or not in the booth. So I have no feelings towards that whatsoever. But as far as people talking about what he brought up in that interview at 101 ESPN, most people, I would say the majority, around 95% of people were just like, hey, he's just speaking the truth. A lot of us knew these things were going on. We knew something was off, and he's just bringing it to light. It's something that, when you love something, and, I clearly have a love for the Cardinals. I'm sure you do too. And you hear somebody speak ill about them, your first thing is to defend them. And that was my mechanism at first, was like, oh no. But at the same time, like I said yesterday, it kind of is like opening my eyes to like, maybe things aren't nearly as good as I thought they were. And maybe things are much worse than I thought they were, or ever thought they were. And when you hear this from Jim Edmonds, and granted, this is one man's opinion, all right, and how he sees things. And I made sure that was brought up over and over yesterday. This is not, he can't speak for the whole group. He can't speak for every Cardinal alumni that is out there. He's just going off what he felt people were feeling like, and at least how he felt. And I'm sure he's spoken to many of the other guys. He's still friends with some of these guys, and that, maybe they've expressed their discontent with things that are going on and with the way they're being treated by the Cardinals organization at this point. I hope we hear more from other guys who have played for the team or worked for the team, and could shed some more light on this subject to see if, everything that Jimmy is saying is how a lot of other people feel, because that would be an even bigger eye-opener, I think. But he can't speak for the whole group. But where there's smoke, there's usually fire. So it's hard for me to just dismiss all of the things that he said, that, saying that he's just salty and disgruntled because he's not with them. And maybe that's a little bit, but at the same time, I feel there's more to it. And Jimmy isn't the only former Cardinal to actually say some things about the organization and question their methods or lack thereof. Thomas Govain, who was supposed to be on here today, actually wrote about today at redbirdrants.com about some of the other people who have brought things up in the past. He brings up some other names who have had issues with the team, like Tommy Pham, obviously, is one that most people are familiar with. Zach Gallen, star pitcher for the Diamondbacks, he used to be in the Cardinals organization, is another one. So check that out at redbirdrants.com if you get a chance. But we know that for this upcoming season, the Cardinals have plenty of questions, plenty of question marks heading into the year. And Thomas wrote a piece about the ifs for 2025. If the Cardinals are going to be successful this year, these things are going to have to happen. So we're going to cover those for you next on Locked On Cardinals. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there is no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, I am a Packers fan. I am a Packers owner. I do not have any stake in this game whatsoever. Eagles, Chiefs. I'm leaning towards the Chiefs, not only for the Missouri factor, but the fact that everybody hates the Chiefs now, which makes me kind of want to like them because you always need the bad guy, right? And I'm going to root for the bad guy in this one. Everybody wants to see a fresh face. They're sick of Mahomes and Kelsey and Taylor Swift and everything that everybody gets worked up. They don't like the refs always pulling strings for the Chiefs. Whatever. It makes me want to like them even more. So, but if you're not a fan of either or, you can still make the game fun with FanDuel. Just try and predict certain things like who's going to score that first touchdown, who's going to be the MVP, what's the coin toss going to do. That's all available at FanDuel, and it makes it easy to get in on the action all game long because you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds with the live betting feature, which will allow you to stay involved no matter what is happening on the field. It's super easy to use and navigate app. Get it now, and $5 bet. Place a $5 bet. And you could potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl. Icing on the cake with FanDuel. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59. Thanks for making Locked on Cardinals your first listen every day. Leave your comments on YouTube as well as on Twitter X. Anytime you want, your feedback is always welcome and encouraged. Our buddy Thomas Govain from RedwoodRants.com. He's out today, but recently talked about specific ifs with the team heading into the upcoming season. If this happens or that happens, then this could happen. So I want to run through a few of them here with you now. And these are some of the things that the Cardinals will need to happen if they want to succeed this season. When I think of success for the 2025 season for the Cardinals, I'm saying at least the same number of wins as last year, 83 or more, hopefully more, right? But at least 83 to have a winning record and to be competitive. You know, they finished second place in the division for a while. They were right there in the wild card. So something like that is what I'm looking for as the positive, you know, kind of a good ceiling for the Cardinals this year. Many people disagree. Many people think they're going to take a major step back and be somebody that, you know, wins in the mid 70s, which I have a tough time believing that. I think these guys are better than they're getting credit for, but there are some ifs. And the first one on Thomas's if list is Lars Nootbaar, who we know he's been a fan favorite. Attitude-wise, there's not a better guy on the roster. You know, you fall in love with his energy and the way he plays the game, but he hasn't quite lived up to the expectations that the organization has had for him or the fans have had for him. And the if for Lars Nootbaar, which Thomas talks about, is, of course, his health. You know, that's really been the issue with Lars. And Thomas says, I'm not saying Lars Nootbaar needs to play 150 or more games. All I'm asking for is 130 games of a healthy Lars Nootbaar. That's 80% of the games next year. That will be sufficient. Nootbaar has always been what's known as a StatCast darling. His baseball savant page is dripping with red. Nootbaar is one of just 5 players in all of baseball who ranked in the 90th percentile or higher in hard hit rate and chase rate. The only other players who fit that bill are Aaron Judge, Kyle Schwarber, Juan Soto, and Seiya Suzuki. For those keeping track at home, Nootbaar shares this statistic with 2 perennial MVP candidates and 2 fantastic offensive players. Now, he goes into some stats from 2023 that prove how good Nootbaar can be when he's healthy, and he wraps it up by saying that Lars Nootbaar is an essential piece to the Cardinals' puzzle of success next year. He won't be able to carry the team by himself, but if he can stay healthy, he will help the Redbirds beat even their most optimistic projections. And I agree. It's hard to disagree with that. You know, it's something that it's been a bummer for Lars Nootbaar's career so far as a major leaguer. There's just always an injury holding him back. It happens. It seems like every 30 games, something happens to him. Last year, he got hurt in the spring, and that ruined the start of the season. The year before, wasn't it the thumb that he broke on like opening day? I mean, there's been so many injuries, it's hard to keep up with it, but there's just always something. And I would love to see Lars get off to a hot start and a healthy start. More importantly, where he's not constantly trying to get back in the groove. He's never been able to sustain a groove because he's always trying to come back from an injury. So makes it very, very difficult to be consistent. So Lars Nootbaar, whether he's playing left field, center field, wherever it may be, got to keep him healthy somehow, some way. Number 2, if on Thomas's list here, Erick Fedde, who honestly, at least for me, has been kind of the forgotten man when we talk about this rotation because he, was with the team, trade deadline move, but it was a very brief period before the Cardinals were out of it and people lost interest and weren't paying so much attention to him. They fall out of contention and he really didn't do all that much to stand out to fans to make a really good impression when he was wearing a Cardinals uniform. Now, Thomas's if with Fedde is if Fedde is more like the pitcher in the first half of the 2024 season with Chicago, that's going to be a big boost for the Cardinals. Thomas says this about Erick. Do you know how many teams had at least 2 pitchers on their team who finished in the top 25 of all pitchers in WAR last year? And he's using FanGraphs WAR, in case you're wondering. He says 7. The Royals, the Mariners, the Braves, the Padres, the Phillies, the Astros, and the Cardinals. The Cardinals had Sonny Gray and Erick Fedde. Fedde had a career year last year with a 3.30 ERA and a 3.86 FIP in 177 and a third innings, which pitched for a 126 ERA plus. That's top of the rotation stuff there. After arriving in St. Louis, Fedde took a step back. The ERA went up nearly 2 points. His strikeouts dipped. His walks rose. However, he did begin to settle down in the final month of the season. In 4 starts in September, Fedde had a 2.57 ERA with 17 strikeouts in 21 innings. He says, don't expect results like that from the 32-year-old righty, but it's definitely a strong sign for 2025. He doesn't have to be an ace, but the duplication of his 2024 season will pair perfectly at the top of the Cardinals rotation along with Sonny Gray. Yeah, having the White Sox version of Erick Fedde would be huge. Would be absolutely huge for the Cardinals, an incredible boost to the team. And, I think about that and then piggyback what Andre Pallante could mean to this rotation next year. If he is like the guy that we saw in the second half of the season when he became a full-time starter, that would give you 3 solid guys. I'm not saying superstar, Cy Young, ace guys. I'm saying, but that's 3 really good pitchers. And if the Cardinals do fall out of contention again this year, it also makes Fedde a very valuable trade chip at the deadline. I hate to talk like that already. I want to be positive, but the reality is most people don't think the Cardinals are going to compete for much this year. And I'm not expecting them to stink like they did in 2023, but similar to last year where they floated around 500 seems a more likely scenario to me. The dream for the Cardinals rotation is to have Gray and Fedde be like their all-star selves. Michaelis to get back to his all-star form, which, he's a couple of years removed from that and has been a big disappointment the last couple of seasons. Steven Matz, can we keep him healthy? Is that a possibility? Pallante and McGreevy to take that next step, or even have Quinn Matthews bring some excitement to the rotation in 2025. Those are, that's the dream. If you're thinking about what the Cardinals could do to contend for at least a wild card spot or even a division title in 2025, you need these guys to be good and at the top level that we've seen them at before. And that's the frustrating part about some of these guys, specifically with like Michaelis, where, you've seen him be pretty darn good at times. And there are like these glimpses where you see him in a game and you're like, there he is. Where he's popping the corners, right? He's keeping the ball down, and he's not just throwing up gopher balls up there and just meatballs and throwing that, that woo curveball that is like an eephus and just floats over the plate. Sometimes it catches people off guard and it works, and we laugh and golf clap for it. But just far too often he's over the heart of the plate, and his stuff is just not good enough. It doesn't move enough. It doesn't have enough velo for it to make a difference, and ends up being a 400-foot shot over a fence somewhere. So, but there are those moments where you're like, I know how you can be successful. Just stay away from the heart of the plate. Steven Matz, we've seen him pitch very, very well at times. Health has always been his problem his whole career. I wouldn't expect it to get any better this year. That's fool's gold to believe that it will. That's why I say I think he should be in the bullpen. I don't think he's built to be a starter anymore. So I would like to see him in the bullpen and see Palante and McGreevy and Quinn Matthews or any of the other starters get a crack at that rotation over Steven Matz. We're going to tackle two more of Thomas Gauvain's ifs for the Cardinals to be successful next on Locked On Cardinals. Thank you again for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen today. For your second listen, you can find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings you the daily blend of humor and baseball, covering all the teams across the league. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, Thomas Gauvain from RedbirdRants.com, not here today, but we're going through his biggest ifs article at RedbirdRants.com to make the Cardinals successful in 2025. Next up on the list, it's a 2-4 in this one. Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman get brought up in this one. Thomas Gauvain says this about them. We'll start with what he says about Jordan. Says that Jordan Walker was once a top 3 prospect in baseball, according to every outlet that does such rankings. He was a high-power monster of a hitter who was born to crush baseballs. He is a league average hitter after just 584 at-bats. Nolan Gorman was supposed to be a power hitter in the middle of the Cardinals lineup. The lefty masher has hit 60 home runs in just over 1,000 at-bats, but he's got a strikeout rate north of 34%. Neither Walker nor Gorman have been the hitter that the Cardinals anticipated and needed them to be. Walker, he says, to be successful this year, must do better than the 6.9% line drive rate that he posted last year in the majors, and he has to get his ground ball rate under 50% if he intends on being a successful hitter. For Gorman to be a successful hitter this year, he is going to have to strike out less, with at a much lower rate, square up pitches. If Gorman could strike out at a 30% clip while hitting the ball as hard as he did in 2023, he could become an all-star in short order. I've talked about both of these guys. This is absolutely on point because these are the two guys that are supposed to be the new Goldie and Arenado. You know, these are supposed to be the next two big pillars that you build this franchise around. And if they fail to become those players, the Cardinals are screwed. They're screwed. On paper, if you get similar production from, for guys from this past year going into 2025, you get similar production and maybe even a step up from guys like Mason Wynn and Alec Burleson, still very, very young, obviously. Wilson Contreras staying in the lineup the whole time, missed half the season. Ivan Herrera continues to hit the way he did this past year. Plus, Walker and Gorman end up panning out and becoming the guys we thought they were going to be. That's a pretty darn good lineup. I mean, it's not bad. Having Goldie, Nato, Walker, and Gorman all struggle last year, plus Contreras missing half the year because of injuries, it just destroyed this offense. I mean, those are 5 guys. They were supposed to be 5 of your best hitters. And they weren't. They weren't even close. Contreras was when he got to play. Like, I shouldn't say Contreras was. He wasn't, but he couldn't play half the year because he got hurt. So, and that just, what team can survive that? To have all of them go down, it's almost impossible. And that's why when the Cardinals still had 83 wins last year, I tend to give them some credit for that. Because when all of them have bad years, specifically Goldie, Nato, Walker, and Gorman, and you still win 83 games despite that, something was going right. Bullpen obviously was pretty good. Pitching staff, relatively healthy. And then you had some guys like, Mason Wynn step up. And obviously Brendan Donovan was a big piece to what was good last year for the Cardinals. So, but if you could put them all together and have a consistently good season, on paper, it shouldn't be as bad of a lineup as it was last year. They should be much, much better. His fourth if on the list, the bullpen. And this one, I'm going to kind of tie together with another if of his where he talks about young pitchers stepping up. Here's what Thomas has to say, that the bullpen will definitely consist of Ryan Helsley, Matthew Liberatore, Jojo Romero, John King, and Ryan Fernandez. The remaining 3 spots have yet to be determined. This is where the young crop of Cardinals prospects will come in handy. Players like Michael McGreevy, Riley O'Brien, Gordon Graceffo, Zach Thompson, Quinn Matthews, Sim Robertson, Ian Bedell, Cooper Jerpy, Matt Svanson, and Drew Rom could hear their names be called next year. Of this bunch, only McGreevy, O'Brien, Graceffo, Thompson, and Rom have made their professional debuts. In order for the Cardinals to be successful, at least 2 of these pitchers must be promoted and pitch well next year. Now, as it pertains to the bullpen specifically, Thomas says that last year the Cardinals played in 51 one-run games, which I know we all felt that. It seemed every game was super tight, and we were always chewing our nails and, very, very nervous, anxiety all the time, constantly, one-run games. A total that trailed only the Brewers, Tigers, Mariners, Rays, and Athletics, and tied with the Cubs and Pirates. They finished with a 29-22 record for the 5th best winning percentage in said games. There's a high likelihood that the Cardinals find themselves in a comparable amount of one-run games in 2025, given the lack of moves this offseason to dramatically improve the offense beyond prayers for internal growth and improvements. Therefore, the bullpen must be as stout as it was last year, particularly from the 7th inning on. Now, he points out with Andrew Kittredge gone, who was extremely good for the Cardinals last year. He says with him gone, Gordon Graceffo, Teen Kins, and Matt Svanson could be dark horses to pitch late in games. Even Cooper Jerpy or Takota Roby could surprise skeptics, provide meaningful innings in relief. I don't have to tell you this. Having a good bullpen is a key to winning in this day and age. Gone are the days, and it's going to upset some of my veteran fans, but gone are the days of guys pitching 7, 8, 9 innings. It just doesn't happen very often anymore. It's not how these rosters are built anymore. These guys are built to go 5, 6 innings and then let the bullpen come in and take over from there. I know it upsets you. I get it, but it's the way this game has changed. It's the same thing how I still get all angry about strikeouts. It's become acceptable to strike out nowadays if you can put the ball over the wall, and it drives me bonkers, the amount of strikeouts and the amount of not putting the ball in play that teams are comfortable with. Drives me nuts. But when we talk about this bullpen, some of the guys that, have big question marks over their heads for me, Riley O'Brien. I'm very curious what Riley O'Brien can do after essentially being hurt all season last year. A lot of hype in spring training. Didn't pan out, but he's back, and he's not some old fart. And he doesn't appear to have any issues coming into spring training. It looks like he's going to be a full go. So I'm curious what they can squeeze out of Riley O'Brien. Is he somebody who can step up late in games? He brought up Matt Svanson, who has closed in the minors. Andre Granillo is a name that I still am eager to see if he cracks the roster at some point in the major leagues. He's had a lot of success in the minors as a late inning guy and has closed and has had great success there. I don't know why he's not brought up more often. I don't know what it is about him that isn't good enough, but he'll be at camp this year. So I'm curious how he does. Chris Roycroft, someone who's got the size and the demeanor to fill a role like that. I mean, he's a monster out there, 6'8", throws 96 on average. He's got this great extension because he's so tall where it looks like he's right on top of the hitter when he releases it. Hopefully they can mold him into something special. He's 27 years old now. It's a little late in the game, but we've seen it happen many times before where a couple adjustments here and there, and all of a sudden they become something special. Can they figure something out with Chris Roycroft? Could Gordon Graceffo help fill that role? Or do they see him as a starter instead? Because what I don't want them to do, and everydayers know this about me, what I don't want them to do is the same crap that they did with guys like Zach Thompson, Jordan Hicks, Matthew Liberatore, and have these guys who are starters in the minors. Graceffo, Roby, Robertson, they're starters, but they start going back and forth between reliever and starter, reliever and starter. Pick a lane with these guys and let them live or die there. Either flourish in that role or they're not going to be a major league starter or reliever, but just pick one. Just pick one and stick with it. No more bouncing back and forth. That I do not want. The full article that Thomas wrote is in the description in the show notes below. Read it in full for yourself because he gets, much more descriptive and the ways these guys are supposed to be better next year. But don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments section as well. Tomorrow's show, we're supposed to have Cardinals beat reporter Jeff Jones joining us. So get your questions in the comments section for Jeff so that we can ask him some stuff tomorrow. I appreciate you for making Locked on Cardinals your first listen every day. If you haven't already, give us a follow on Twitter, X at @LO_Cardinals and at JD Sports Radio. Like, subscribe on YouTube, and help our channel and love for the Cardinals grow. We cracked the 11,300 mark. We're making the push for 12,000 subscribers. Would love to reach that. That's kind of the goal by the start of the regular season. So if you're somebody who comes by and you enjoy your everyday content talking about the St. Louis Cardinals, this is the place to be. We have got you covered. And I encourage you to like and subscribe, and help our channel and our love for the Cardinals grow. You guys are the best fans in baseball for a reason, and we will see you next time on Locked on Cardinals.